What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is a continuation of the Stat Focus series. Today, we are covering the skill champions currently available in Marvel Contest of Champions as of January 2025. So, let's get right into it. Attuma, sort of basic here, not really going to go too into detail with why he has the certain stat focus. Crit, because that's basically what he needs on offense. You're not going to be using him too often as an attacker, but when you are, crit is great. Also, block proficiency or any energy or physical would be great for offense. And then defense, he definitely wants the energy stat focus. I feel that most of his great counters deal energy damage, so slowing them down a little bit makes the most sense. OG Black Panther, another basic one, crit on offense, block pen on defense, crit because he benefits from crits for triggering those bleeds, and the defense stat focus doesn't matter because he's not a defender. Black Panther Civil War, one of my, I didn't expect to like this champion as much as I do when he first came out, but I'm a huge fan of this guy, and I will eventually take him up to rank 3. He is 100% worth it, in my opinion. So on offense, I really like the block proficiency stat focus. You're doing a lot of parrying and blocking with Black Panther when you're using him on offense. So just making him more tanky for those parries and those block hits that you do take makes a lot of sense to me. And then defensively, I like the Pierce because you're going to be blocking hits from him when you're fighting him, like his special one, if you don't want to get clipped by it. So Pierce makes the most sense for defense. Black Widow Deadly Origin doesn't really need any specific stat focus. All of her damage comes from the shocks that she deals. So I have crit here. Doesn't really matter. You could put on critical damage. You could put on energy resistance, block proficiency, whatever you want on Black Widow makes sense. And then the defense stat focus, again, does not necessarily matter. Block pen I have, but Black Widow is not a defender, so it doesn't really matter. Blade. Blade is an interesting champion. I remember Save for Blade. I was part of that whole movement. I was very lucky to get Blade out of only one crystal. So Blade, a little special spot in my heart, but I don't use Blade often anymore. I have not used my 7-star Blade all but one time for one objective in the Eternity of Pain saga of the past year. So I think Blade is solid. I think he's good. Does not necessarily need any specific stat focus, so I think the basic setup of crit block pen makes the most sense for Blade. But again, if you need specific stats, then change them. Bullseye. So, Bullseye. I've heard mixed things on Bullseye, conflicting things on the best offensive stat focus for him. I've heard that people like running crit because he has a base critical damage rating of 0, but I've also heard that special damage on offense makes a lot of sense for Bullseye because all of his attacks during the specials are going to deal more overall damage. So I guess it's dealer's choice if you want to run critical damage rating or special attack damage. Either one is fantastic for Bullseye. And then defensively, obviously you want to run that Pierce. Chee'ilth, very cool champion. I ranked up Chee'ilth for the Necropolis new challengers approaching Karina challenge, and she did exceptional in that. So I'm very happy to have Chee'ilth up at rank 2. She's very useful. I think the best thing for Chee'ilth is probably crit. I think she relies on crits for dealing her damage, although I could be wrong here. No, she does not rely on crits. I misspoke there. I'm thinking of other champions in the skill class that need to crit for bleed damage. But she is not really needing any specific stat focus. If you want to give her block proficiency, that would be nice because you go for a lot of block baits with Chee'ilth and block bait heavy counters, so having higher block proficiency makes a lot of sense for her. And then defensively, she is not a defender, so it does not necessarily matter. Crossbones, easy picks here for Crossbones. He has the normal base setup of crit on offense, block pen on defense. Crossbones, more crits for Crossbones is exactly what he needs. Every time he would crit, he gains a Fury buff, so obviously giving him that crit stat focus makes so much sense. Elsa Bloodstone. I'll be completely honest, I'm not super well versed in Elsa Bloodstone anymore. I used to be, but nowhere near as well versed in her anymore. So for offense, I think she deserves the critical damage rating stat focus. If you just saw there, she has 41% base critical rating. So giving her the crit rating stat focus doesn't really make a lot of sense. Giving her critical damage rating, that makes a heck of a lot more sense. And then defensively, I think Pierce is fine. You know, if you end up pushing an Elsa to a special 2, it's going to hurt a lot more than it would if you had a different stat focus. So I think Pierce is the way to go. Falcon. Falcon's sort of the same thing with Elsa. He has a very high base critical rating, so you want to run critical damage rating for Falcon. And then defensively, doesn't really matter. He's not a defender. I would throw Pierce. Gwenpool. Gwenpool's really cool. I'm glad she's a 7-star now, and I'm even more glad that we got her for free because I'd be not very inclined to spend any money or resources for a 7-star Gwenpool, but to just be given her for free, very cool. Very cool move, Kabam. Thank you for that. So on offense, Gwenpool, I think she just needs crits. She doesn't need the crits for her bleeds. She just has a 30% chance to inflict bleed on every single attack. So it's not tied to critical hits. So I think crit is fine. I also think critical damage would be fine for Gwenpool because she already has a very high base crit rate. But crit seems fine for her. And then defense does not matter. She is not a defender. Hawkeye. So, Hawkeye benefits from the critical damage stat focus because his critical bleeds get multiplied by his critical rating. So, yeah, you just look on the special 3 here. The bleed potency is multiplied by Hawkeye's critical damage multiplier. So, increasing his critical damage from stat focus is going to increase the damage of those critical bleeds. And then defensively, block pen, not too big of a deal. Jabari Panther. I don't necessarily know that all that much about Jabari Panther. I know she's good. She kind of reminds me of Okoye a little bit. She has a sort of similar feel and play style, at least from my brief experience with Jabari Panther. But it seems like critical damage rating is the best thing for her because she gains a massive critical rating increase during the hunt. Yeah, 10,000 critical rating increase. So critting harder is going to be better for Jabari than critting more because she already has such an increase in her base kit that adding more from the stat focus isn't going to do much. And then defensively, I think block pen is the perfect stat focus for her. Any of the resistance passives would be great as well. Killmonger, personal favorite of mine. I'm a big fan of Killmonger. Definitely want to run the critical rating stat focus because he benefits from critical hits as they apply his bleed debuff. So you definitely want to run crit there. And then defensively, I think there's a couple of things for Killmonger. Energy resistance makes a lot of sense because a lot of solid Killmonger counters deal energy damage, so slowing them down makes a heck of a lot of sense. Also, increasing his physical resistance or armor rating makes a lot of sense for Killmonger. Korg. Korg is very similar to Killmonger. They share sort of the same stat focus identity. You want to have energy resistance on Korg, not because it slows people down, but because Korg actually has a negative energy resistance. So bringing it back into the positives makes him more of a balanced resistance capable defender, you know, because negative energy resistance for Korg really hurts him in a lot of matches. So throwing this on and pushing it to the positive makes the most sense. And then I have critical rating on offense because that's the base offensive stat focus for champions who don't necessarily have a specific need, you know. Kraven the Hunter. Kraven is a exclusive 7-star that we got during the Cyber Weekend sales, I believe. Thank you, Karate Mike, for this Kraven. So, I used to love Kraven. I used to be a huge fan of Kraven. Not as much anymore. I think he has just sort of fallen off a cliff and then another cliff at the bottom of that cliff, which led to another cliff, which fell by a Denny's and then fell off another cliff. But Kraven, he needs the critical rating increase very badly because all of his critical hits inflict bleed. So when you're inflicting those critical hits, prior to your ramp up, it makes more sense. And then it makes more sense to run critical rating because prior to ramp up, you're inflicting bleed. That's what I meant to say. I think I said part of that sentence and not the whole thing. And defensively, block pen makes the most sense. Okay, Mantis, really cool character. Mantis is really awesome. Love her. Critical damage rating is fantastic for Mantis, even though she already has such a high critical damage rating. I think the higher it goes, the better. Also, not opposed to the special damage stat focus because her special attacks, you know, just getting that 8% bump makes a lot of sense. But I think Mantis really likes the critical damage rating because she's critting fairly often. So critting harder on your base hits and then your specials rather than just your specials, I feel that's better. But that's just me. I think critical damage or special attack damage works for Mantis very well. And then defense, stat focus, it's block pen, doesn't really matter. She is not a defender. Masacre. So, I don't actually know the best stat focus for Masacre. I'm under the impression that armor penetration is one of the best for him because bypassing that armor makes a lot of sense for like your special 2 damage, but special damage itself is also probably very strong. I think I remember a couple of months ago doing a test and finding out that armor pen actually deals more damage overall. So I'm going to tentatively say that armor pen is the best offensive stat focus for Masacre, and then defense obviously Pierce, he's not a defender. I can't hit that button for the life of me. Misty Knight. I don't like Misty Knight. I don't really enjoy her at all. She is like so simple and so ineffective, really. She has those guaranteed crits when you ramp up her charges, which is cool. It's like it's interesting, you know, like full on guaranteed crits while being unblockable. You'd think it's really good. You'd think it's an awesome idea. But Misty just she just doesn't do much, you know? She is more so an annoying defender than a palpable attacker. But because she has those guaranteed crits, you want to run the critical damage rating stat focus, just increasing that critical damage even more. Armor pen would also not be a bad thing to run for Misty. And then defense, block pen makes the most sense. Mole Man, very simple here. Run critical damage because he has guaranteed crits. Run block pen because he's Mole Man. You're going to be blocking hits. He's shrugging debuffs, blocking more hits. Just makes sense, you know? Moondragon. I think Moondragon's pretty cool. She's a champ that definitely has flown under the radar, but she's not bad. She's actually pretty solid. I've seen some sick stuff from Moondragon from my good friend BMCG, BMcG. So if you go check his channel out, he's got some Moondragon gameplay. I think critical rating makes the most sense for Moondragon. I could totally be wrong. I'm not a Moondragon player, so I could easily be misspeaking here. But critical rating makes the most sense, and then Moondragon's not really a defender, so block pen for defense. Patriot, another champ that I just don't really like all that much. It seems like critical rating makes sense for Patriot because he has a low base critical rating to begin with. I also don't think special attack damage would be a bad choice either because of that big special 2 you end up throwing with your proper ramp up. But I'm not a huge fan of Patriot, so I could totally be wrong. And if I'm wrong, please somebody correct me. So that's what I say for offense, either critical rating or special attack damage. And then defense, block pen, he's not really a super tough defender. He can be a little tricky, but nothing crazy. Shang-Chi, now this guy I love. Love Shang-Chi. Huge fan of this champion. I think critical damage rating makes the most sense for him. Critting harder when you do crit, and that's often with Shang-Chi, just makes the most sense out of all of these stat focuses that you could select from for offense. And then defense, not really a defender, but block pen does make a lot of sense because he can crit through your block. So, yeah, hits harder. Silver Sable, a new rank 3 of mine. Love Silver Sable. She is phenomenal. Critical damage rating is the stat focus to run for Sable because it's very similar to Hawkeye. Her critical shock potency is increased by her critical damage multiplier, so more critical damage equals higher shock damage. And then defense, block pen, as with most champions, they want to run block pen because it is the base stat focus. And then that's cycling back to all of the 7-star skill champions I have, but there's a couple that I do not own. Black Cat is one of them. So, I believe Black Cat needs critical hits to deal bleeds. Yeah, so she needs crits to deal bleeds, and she doesn't have the highest of critical ratings. It's high, but it's not as high as other champions. So you want to run critical rating for Black Cat, and then defense doesn't really matter. Block pen, energy or physical, armor rating, any of those work. Hitmonkey. This guy is sick. Huge fan of Hitmonkey. The best stat focus for him is probably critical damage, although I very well see an argument for running armor penetration because he already has such a high critical damage rating that bypassing more of the opponent's armor might deal more damage. So I'm going to say critical damage rating or armor pen for Hitmonkey. And then defense, I think the block pen stat focus makes the most sense. Okoye. Okoye is sick. I'm a huge fan of Okoye. If you didn't see my video, I think it was yesterday by the time of this video's release about that Bullseye takedown. She's sick, man, and she has so much range. I would love a 7-star Okoye. So, Offensively, I think the best thing for her is probably critical rating. Critical damage rating is also not a bad idea, but I think critical rating makes the most sense for Okoye. More crits equals more bleeds and more shocks. So increasing your critical rating makes the most sense to me. And then defense, armor, block pen, energy, physical, doesn't matter. And then Ronin here. Shout out to Allison Edits. Ronin's pretty cool. I just wish Ronin was more widely available and didn't cost, an incursion crystal, because I think Ronin's actually a pretty cool champ. Offensively for Ronin, I think critical rating makes the most sense. I can also see an argument for armor penetration because he does have a high base critical rating and critical damage rating, but either of those two will work very well. And then defensively, you want to run the block penetration stat focus. Nothing else really makes sense for Ronin. So that is the skill class, the currently available 7-star skill class as of January 2025, and every respective stat focus that I believe should be equipped for offense and defense. Again, all of these videos are my opinion. I'm not claiming that all of these champs, like, this is the best thing for them and nothing else works. If you have a different experience or you find something else to be more effective, go for it. This is just a suggestion. This is not some mandatory viewing. Like, this is not the end-all be-all for stat focus, So yeah, that is the end of the video. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, and I really hope that you did, please consider hitting that subscribe button and also hitting the like button. Both of those things are extremely helpful for the channel, and it pushes the videos out there to the YouTube algorithm and lets people know that I'm making content that other people are enjoying. So, once again, thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.